Hey everybody, welcome to another episode of Visual Studio Toolbox. I'm your host, Leslie Richardson, and today we are continuing our mini-series all about extending Visual Studio using the latest, greatest Visual Studio.extensibility model that has been diligently worked on by the wonderful Visual Studio Extensibility team. So joining me from that team once again is Tevin. Hey, Tevin. Eh, Last episode, we talked about project querying and just how involved you can choose to query your projects or how broad you want to get with it. And now we're going to take it a step further. And now that we've queried the projects or the solutions or the files that we want, we're actually going to do stuff to them, right?
Yeah, yeah. So first step, the last session we were querying stuff. Now it's like, okay, what can we do? What can we modify? What can we change? Can we do actions? And so that's kind of what this is stepping into. Um, also start by sharing my screen, um, just to give an example. So
And once again, if you haven't seen the previous episodes, please go check them out. We are just kind of building on top of concepts as we go. So if you see us not explaining something, that's probably because we already talked about it in another episode. So check out the playlist.
yeah, this is like really cool. So here, this is just same kind of scenario that we had in the previous
Mhm.
example or a previous demo, but here I'm gonna call this thing called create file, and boom, there's a created file.txt.
Ooh.
So this is just an example of one of the things you can do. Um,
Mhm.
there's a lot of things you could do, but that's just kind of
Oh,
peek into some of the actions you can do. You can get more advanced stuff, but let's
mhm.
kind of go into that sample.
Yeah, I'd imagine as an example, you could like find all the CS files under this particular project and then go to line 27 in the editor and modify the code to save this or something.
Yeah, there's a lot of things. I mean, you could probably say find all the .cs files and delete them all. There's
Yeah.
there's a lot of power in like knowing how to query and then take actions. This is kind of like the previous episode. Same setup.
Mhm.
We have command. Uh, the main thing that we're concerned about is this queries right here. So
Yep.
we have this extensibility object, and the difference here is we have update project async. I think in the previous episode we talked about query projects async. This one's update project async, and that's to represent okay, we're doing an update to the project. A where clause is another way to like filter down to things you want. It's like similar to like SQL or other types of syntax very similar to this querying languages. You have some constraints. So we take the project, we say, okay, we want the project name
Mhm.
to be exactly console app1. Create a file called createfile.txt, pass cancellation token. So, like we saw, just the demo again, tools, create file. And as you can see, the console app1, strictly the console app1, has the create file.txt.
Now that we're starting to get into some more advanced situations with these queries, queries don't always work the first time around. So, from a debugging standpoint, are there any good strats that people should know about like how to identify what went wrong, if anything?
Yeah, so we have this thing called IUpdateResults. So I think in the previous examples, we talked about iQueryResults, which is this wrapper around IEnumerable. For update queries, we actually have this thing called IUpdateResults. So what you can do is here the return type for this update query is iQueryResults. You can cast that to this IUpdateResults, and it has the same thing as iQueryResult, except it has this additional property called errors. And that's a collection of all the failures that went on during your query. So you can check those errors, handle them appropriately, just to check if things went right. If there's something that went wrong and maybe you're expecting some sort of something, you can make sure to check against that. So yeah, that's a good way to, that's probably more advanced. You can just cast the return type of this to that, and then you can check the errors. Okay, next, let's move on to the next one. So the next example is add solution configurations. Same setup as before, always grabbing this from extensibility.workspaces. What we're doing is just kind of showing you like a sneak peek. It's not necessarily the most useful, but showing you that you can actually use queries in tandem with these updates. So here, we create a solution, get the solution space name, grab the name actually, and then similarly to the example before, we do a where clause where we make sure the solution equals that one. Here
Awesome.
we do add solution configuration.
Cool. So it's okay to have a situation of like multiple queries going on if you need to do some like intermediary work in the middle.
Yeah, I think that's where it gets like really powerful. You can start doing combos like, oh, I want to ask these questions and with the results of that, do this thing and so on and so forth. So combining the two ideas is really powerful.
Mm.
So here,
Although it does look cleaner, I will say. Like I know some people like to have the monolith queries, but if you're able to break it up into
yeah,
readable chunks, that's always nice, in my opinion.
yeah, you could like very clearly like state what you're doing instead of just a huge
Yeah.
doing it.
Good luck. Copilot to the rescue. Please explain.
Yeah. Here, basically, like I said, we grab the solution, make sure that the solution is the same one that we grabbed before, which it should be, and add a solution configuration for debug and propagate false.
Mhm.
And so let me do the demo. So right here, we can see our solution configurations, debug, release. But if we do add solution configuration,
Ooh, it's gonna be there. Yay.
you can see foo is here. So that's
Awesome.
super powerful. Now you can start
Yeah.
like messing with the solution, messing with projects, adding files. Uh,
Yeah, I can get extremely involved if you wanted to.
the next sample that we have is kind of the inverse of that, which is delete solution configuration. So this is delete solution configuration command CS.
That's a
Looks
similar stuff, except delete
yeah,
solution configuration. Yep.
it looks almost the same. The only difference here is instead of add solution, we call delete solution configuration. And again, we're using this update solution async instead of query solution async. So this is how we know that we're doing an update or a modify. So from here, tools. Oh, let me just highlight again. There's
Yep.
foo here that we added. So then we should find delete solution configuration, deleted foo, no longer.
Oh,
Sad to see it go.
Phil had a good run. Yeah, you know, it was a good thing for 30 seconds. Yeah,
Yeah.
it
Yeah.
ran its course.
That's just showing you that there's a lot of things that we can do. So moving to the next one,
Yeah,
we have move file command.
does it
So
mean this is just moving one file from one location to another?
yeah, there's a it does a interesting approach to that. A lot of things going on. If you kind of look at this kind of
Yeah.
goes on for a lot of lines. So I'll kind of explain what we're doing. This first little chunk, like I said, where you can start combining queries with updates. We're creating the project to retrieve the path of the file that should be moved. Get a source file by, let's see, create the project where it's console app1, get the path, get the files, get the file name and the path. From those results, we take the first file, call that source file,
Mhm.
grab its path because we queried for it, so we have access to it. And then here we query the destination project to retrieve its path. So we query for console app2, get the project path and destination project, take that result that we grabbed, get the path that we asked for, to string, and then we call directory get parent. And then from there, we call update project async, which we kind of talked about, where we say, okay, from the projects, we want to do an update to it. So make sure the name is console app2, add file from copy. So it adds a new copy of source file, which we queried from before. So that's the first file in the project, right? And then we place it where we also create for the destination project where we called get parent of the actual query that we ran on console app 2. That's one aspect that actually just
Yep.
does makes a copy, but then there's something different here that you'll notice.
Yeah, so as updatable, which I assume is similar to as queryable, except this is indicating we're taking something, hey, make this part of the query realm again, but we're modifying it similar to that,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah,
Okay.
exactly, exactly. So yeah, this is just like signifying like, hey, this can be updated. And then from there, we're saying do a delete, and then we execute it. This isn't necessarily like a traditional move. It's doing it in two parts where we copy it over and then delete the original. So let's take a look. So tools, move file.
Oh, yep. Program 1 just got moved.
Yep. So
Almost.
program one used to live here. Now it's over here. And you can kind of see that it went in two parts, like copied it over and then deleted. Cool. So the next, let me actually move this back just to make sure we're in a clean state. The next one that we're going to work on is rename file. Similar to what we've seen before, we're going to do a combo of queries and updates. So we query to get the query result, we get console.one, files, file name, file path for that given file, grab the first file, grab its path that lives in console.one, and then they say update projects, make sure the project name is console app1 that we saw before, and rename that file that we just queried about to new name.cs. So what's expected to happen is that the file under console app1 will be now called new name.cs. So let's go over here, see program1.cs, rename file. And there you go.
Nice. And cool. Like all this is starting to look very similar, which is a good thing for consistency purposes. So it's just like as long as you remember the different like function calls in your queries, then seems like you're golden otherwise.
Yeah, yeah. So that's kind of like the key here. Like all of this is very similar. It's just like getting familiar with what things you can query for, like just like
Yeah.
concepts. But the approach to it is, yeah, the approach to it is pretty much the same. And then lastly, just to show like a different aspect, this is unload projects command. So this one, similar setup. Here we have some things that we query for. We're also showing like if you want to, you can have actual like hard coded things. Uh,
Right.
but we query for the solution, make sure the solution is the one that we queried for, and unload the project with the project path. And this unload project path, I think if we take a look, it can be absolute or relative to the solution file. So in this case, it's relative, it's not absolute.
Yeah.
And so
Oh,
expected here, I think console app one should be unloaded. So let's take a look. Tools,
watching console app 1.
unload project. There you go. As you can
There it
see,
is.
console app one is
Nice.
unloaded. So yeah, I think
Right.
that's it. Just to kind of wrap up like this thought. Once you have the tool to query, ask questions about the project and solution, then you can start doing more complex things where you're like, okay, I have these things. Let me do this. Let me add a file. Let me delete a file. Let me unload the project. The world is your oyster, I
Your
guess.
oyster. Yeah.
Um,
Yep. And again, this all looks very straightforward. I think the three major takeaways I'm taking from it is one, make sure you have workspaces extensibility, like an instance of that being called. Otherwise, you can't do any of this. And then two, query solution or just the query keyword to actually do a query and nothing else. And then update to modify said query when you're done.
yep,
So,
exactly, exactly.
and then I also like that you can tweak this a little bit just to be able to view what went wrong with your queries because that happens. No one gets the queries right in the first go.
Right.
So, yeah, I there's a lot of customizability here that is really cool to see. And I mean, for any extender out there, that's exciting. And the fact that it looks pretty straightforward is also exciting because you're not giving yourself a headache on something that shouldn't be headache inducing.
Yeah, exactly, exactly.
Great. Well, thanks for sharing. I think, yeah, project systems really cool. There's a lot of power that's happening with all those different APIs.
Yeah, yeah.
Once again, all those samples that we just explored are going to be linked in the description below. Also, if you didn't see specifically the project querying episode and you watched this one all the way through and were kind of confused, go back to the episode 6, I want to say, and check that out. And also just check out the rest of the extension stuff in the playlist. And also, this isn't even the end. We're not done talking about extending Visual Studio, so stay tuned for more episodes coming your way. Tevin, thank you so much once
Thank
again
you.
for coming on the show. That was cool stuff. And thanks, viewers, for watching. Please go try all this out, share your feedback. This is still a brand new model, so I'm sure the extensibility team would love all of your feedback. And till then, happy coding.